where are you right now, Yash? Are you in, where do you stay? Are you right now in Delhi or are you in your home?
Ma'am, I'm working actually, so I'm staying in Delhi now.
Okay, where are you working?
Ma'am, working as a research fellow in the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy under the Ministry of Finance.
Where is the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy? Where is it
Ma'am,
located?
it's in Qutub Institutional Area in New Delhi, near Haus
Okay.
Khas.
So, what are you sort of doing research on? You must be part of a team which is doing research on something. So, what is that something which you are doing research on?
Ma'am, right now I'm working for the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council on restructuring of the centrally sponsored schemes. So that's the project
Sorry,
I'm
just
currently
repeat.
working
You're going too fast on restructuring of.
restructuring of the centrally sponsored schemes for the PMEAC, for the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. So we are preparing a report for him.
Just elaborate a little more.
Ma'am, so the centrally sponsored schemes are there. So the center runs various kinds of schemes. The CSS, the centrally
Go
sponsored schemes
slow,
are one.
go slow, go slow. We are not
Okay,
working with you in the economic scene. Okay.
okay. So, ma'am,
Punctuate your sentences with a pause
sure.
and there's a comma full stop. So what are
Sure,
the, can
sure.
you name one or two schemes which you are reviewing,
Yes, ma'am.
unless
So,
it is confidential?
no, no, not at all, ma'am. So, Manrega is one of the most
Huh.
important centrally sponsored schemes.
Huh.
The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the Jal Jeevan Mission, National Health Mission.
Okay. Okay. Actually, tell me about the Jal Jeevan Mission. Other schemes are much older, Manrega and Awas Yojana, self-explanatory. But what about this Jal Jeevan? What is
So,
happening there?
ma'am, the Jal Jeevan Mission was
Just,
announced by
let
the
me just interrupt you. What is the profile of this? Is it linked to sanitation also, or only drinking water, or both?
ma'am, it's linked to both of them actually. So, because you can't have good quality drinking water unless you also manage sanitation, because the water sources will get contaminated. So, the government has rightly focused on both the aspects. So, the phase 2 of the Swachh Bharat mission actually takes care of the sanitation part, while the Jal
Yeah.
Jeevan mission is focused on the drinking water part. So it was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister in 2019 during his Independence Day speech to provide full functional household tap connections to all households by 2024. So Nal Se Jal scheme.
Okay,
Basically.
good. You have done MA from the school, and you have
Yes, ma'am.
done well. What ails Indian economy now? We have been reading that it is just Corona, but even otherwise, since first quarter of 2018, there has been a dip in GDP, dip in so many economic activities. So decline set in, and we are now, not even at 2016 level. So your comments very briefly.
Yes, ma'am. So yes, rightly you said that the economic slowdown has been going on before the pandemic itself. So the most important reason for that has been a massive fall in investment by the private sector, and that is tied with the fall in demand, particularly from the rural areas. So we are a consumption-driven economy with around 60% of our
No, so
GDP
I said,
coming.
what ails? You are giving me the observation and the
Sure.
facts.
Okay.
What
Okay.
ails and what do you think can be a corrective measure? Very briefly.
Okay.
Just think
Yeah. Okay.
into the point.
Yeah. So, ma'am, the problem that is ailing our economy is the lack of private investment, which is due to the NPA crisis mostly in the banking sector, because of which banks are not willing to lend enough. To correct that, I think we need to clean the banking sector's balance sheets and also the company's balance sheets, so that credit growth can restart again.
But when we read all as a layman, I'm not an economics student, when we hear so much about the non-performing assets and then the government, the RBI bails out the banks, I don't appreciate this, that that the government is bailing out the banks with my taxpayers' hard-earned money for their own inefficiencies. And why not bail out the Kisan who is committing suicide? Because we need the Kisan, irrespective of any economy, everyone needs to eat. There we think so much about waiving the loan. So how does a Kisan stand on his own feet by mere waiver of loan? He needs something to help him on his own. So what do you think of that?
Ma'am,
Crores and
I think
crores on NPA.
ma'am, in an ideal situation, of course, we shouldn't be required to bail either the banks or the Kisan. But given that that's not the case, I think we have to help our farmers, of course, because they are the ultimate
Priority has
breadwinners
to
of the
be
nation. Yes,
priorities has
and
to be farmers. Yeah, that's okay. The
yes,
breadwinners of the nation. I've already said the priority has to be farmers, but that's not happening. So
yes,
in
ma'am.
whatever
But
capacity you're working, I hope you will impress upon your team head that it is more important to look after the farmers, which constitute 60-70% of the population. Anyways, what is this minimum support price? Which is what is the latest on that?
the minimum support price is a guarantee by the government for
No,
23
I'm not
crops.
asking you to define. We all know what is it. I'm saying what is the latest take on it? What is the
Ma'am,
status of its implementation? There's been agitation, Kisan agitation. I mean, the farmers on the Singhu border also. So, what is happening there?
Ma'am, there's imperfect implementation of the MSP because the government, despite declaring it for 23 crops, is not able to procure it for at the MSP for all the crops. So there are
Okay.
large number of farmers who are outside the MSP net. It's majorly happening for
What
paddy
about the
and
formula for the MSP? Is
ma'am,
it adequate? At one point, the government had announced that I think every farmer would be given how much? Twice the
50,
production cost or 50%
50%
more?
of the production, 50%
Huh.
more.
First of all,
So,
it is a matter of debate. What is the production cost? How to evaluate? That is one is a formula part. The other is can we give it or are we giving it? Just tell briefly your appreciation, not the definition. Your appreciation.
ma'am, so we are not able to give 50% of the production cost if you look at production cost as at the C2 level, not at the A2 level. So there are two
What
kinds of
is C2?
production
What is
cost.
A2?
Ma'am,
Don't
so
use
C2,
abbreviations.
yeah, so C2 is a formula by the Commission of Agricultural Cost and Prices, which includes family labor cost also, because a lot of farmers in our country use family labor.
Okay,
So if you
because
include,
no need to go so long, which includes family labor cost. Next,
yeah, so if you include that within the cost of production, then we are not giving 50% of the
and
production
if you
cost.
don't include, are we giving?
If then for a lot of crops, yes, we are currently giving 50% of
Example,
the. Ma'am, in
example.
paddy we are doing that. In maize we are doing that. In wheat
Okay,
also I think we are doing that.
okay. Your father and mother are both in business by incidentally.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am,
What kind
my
of?
mother primarily is a housewife, but my father is in business.
But you have. Achha, okay, what business does he have?
Sorry,
What business? What nature of business?
ma'am. So he's in the refinancing business in the iron ore
Okay,
transport industry.
okay.
You're from Jharkhand, right? Yes, you
Yes,
were
ma'am.
born in
Yes, ma'am.
Jharkhand. Okay. What is the name of the airport?
Birsa Munda International Airport, ma'am, in
Birsa Munda.
Ranchi.
Why is he famous? Birsa Munda?
Ma'am, he at a very young age he led a revolution of the tribals against the British policies of land encroachment in the tribal area and against the missionary activities as well in the area.
Okay. How do you define a tribe?
Um,
Who are tribals? Or what is the status of Indian tribes?
Ma'am, around 10% of our population are tribals. The tribals are defined. I'm not sure, unfortunately, of the exact definition. But my idea is that some rudimentary agricultural technology or subsistence agriculture is what how we define tribal societies primarily. So,
Okay. After the state division, do you think Jharkhand benefited compared to?
uh, ma'am, it has not been able to fulfill all its economic aspirations after separation from Bihar, definitely. But yes, in terms of political aspirations, people of Jharkhand are getting more political representation in a separate state than they were getting in Bihar. So, if you look at the different metrics, then we get different results of whether the separation was a successful one or not. So, that's
Okay. Cooking, you said, is your hobby, right? What kind of
yes.
cooking do you do?
Ma'am, actually, whatever want to eat that day or I feel like eating. So,
Whatever you say. Okay.
so I cook various dishes. So, no particular cuisine.
If a man cooks inside the house, that is at home, people make fun of him. I mean, generally. But then when he becomes a chef, because most of the chefs are men, how do you explain that?
Uh, Ma'am, so yes, that's a very unfortunate trend. In households, it's generally expected that women will run the households, men will run the outer the outer sphere. So if you become a chef and you go to the outer sphere and you do your responsibility there, earn your money, then it's considered okay. But if you do that same thing within the household, helping your wife, helping your children, then it's not considered a good thing. It's not considered manly enough, unfortunately. But I think that's a very unfortunate thing.
Unfortunate thing that it's not considered manly, or it does
Yes,
not
ma'am.
fetch you any money. So what do you have to say about housewives being paid? Recently there
Ma'am,
was a proposal where they said that women who work at home should be paid. Yeah.
Ma'am, there are two sides of this. One is that yes, we have to recognize the work that the women do. Then the other side says that yes, recognition and all is good, but is monetary recognition is the way forward. So they say that it will diminish the value that people generally hold that women contribute to the housework. So that you are trying to put a monetary label on a mother's affection for her children. So that's what
So
they
what is
oppose.
your opinion? What is your opinion?
Yes, ma'am, I think that the climate right now is not conducive to having a monetary payment for household contribution. First, we need to create the system, create the recognition among people that why are we moving towards such a thing in the first place. So I think that is the first way forward instead of directly going for a monetary payment for women's household contribution. We need to allow women to come outside the homes and work according to their choice much more than say confining them to their homes and then trying to make a payment for that. So I think that's the way forward.
Okay, as a student of Delhi University, you must have seen the shift from CBCS to LOCM. So what is the difference?
Ma'am, I'm not sure of the LOCM.
CBCS,
The CBCS I
LOCM
know.
is
I'm not aware of the full form of that. Can you please explain
okay, learning outcome specific this thing, because these days it is more of interdisciplinary part of it. So okay,
Yes, ma'am.
as per the new education policy, what are the changes which you are seeing in Delhi University? Will we see in Delhi University?
Ma'am, the most important one that comes to my mind is that discontinuation of the MPhil that's proposed. Apart from that, the discontinuation of the MPhil courses that's proposed. Apart from that, making PhDs mandatory for teaching at the college level. More interdisciplinary courses, more interdepartmental coordination. That's those are the major changes that are going to happen
And
in
what
the
about this exit plan after 2 years, 3 years, and 4 years?
yes.
Do you
So
think in
after
many of the social sciences subjects, the students will be able to get a job after the second year, exit
ma'am,
after the second year?
I don't think, ma'am, that it applies to all social sciences. So it may happen in, say, a field like economics, but it may not happen, say, in a field like history, unfortunately, that you will be able to get a job after the second year. So I don't think that a one size fits all approach will be good here. You need to have a differentiated policy for different subjects depending upon their employability.
And what about the introduction of more languages that the students have to do compulsory 2 languages?
Uh,
You heard
Ma'am,
about
I
that?
think yes, I think at the school level, learning more languages is a good step because your brain is more at a younger age. You are more prepared to learn more languages. That also boosts creativity, and it also boosts respect and recognition for different cultures and different points of view. Learning more languages. So I think at the school level, yes, we should push for
Go
children.
a little slow. Go a little slow. You're going very
Sure, sure.
fast.
I'm sorry, ma'am. So I think yes, at the school level, we should encourage children to learn multiple languages.
Okay. Can you list out, 3 sectors which have suffered because of the lockdown? Explain why they have suffered.
Um, ma'am, all the contact-based sectors, which is the service sector, like restaurants, like tourism, they have suffered the most because unfortunately the virus spreads just like the economy does through human contact. So whichever sectors are dependent on that have suffered the most. Then the aviation sector has suffered a lot. Aviation, then the manufacturing sector has also suffered a lot because the migrants and the workers were not available, and because of the lockdown, the supply chains were affected. So I think these are the three sectors that suffer.
Last question. Why research is very important for learning?
Ma'am, research is a very important part of learning because learning is not just knowing about the existing ideas. It's also having the ability to question them and to move towards generation of new ideas.
So
So
how do you explain to a person what is research? Like, I don't know what is research. So how do you explain
okay,
it to a layman?
so ma'am, for example, if I am because cooking is my hobby, so I can think of through that. So say I'll just explain that. For example, if you are a new person to cooking and by chance you put say extra salt in your curry and you want to do something about that, so you would want to try out different methods. That's one kind of research, and by chance you may stumble upon say putting more potatoes in your curry so that it extracts the extra salt. So that's research basically, that you have a problem and you try to work out different methods to solve that problem, and you hit upon a solution.
Correlation between facts?
Ma'am, yes, not just correlation, but also majorly trying to find out causation between different things. So yes, you stumbled upon potatoes reducing the salt level. Then the next step is to understand why that happened. Why
Okay.
potatoes in particular?
Okay. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So Yash, what do you cook? What do you
Uh,
specialize in?
Sir, I cook very good pav bhaji.
Right?
I make good parathas,
Okay.
good
Pav bhaji
idlis.
to paratha, right?
Sorry,
Pav bhaji to paratha, yeah.
and
That's
I
some.
make good idlis as well. So,
Okay. So, um, all right. Now you gave an analogy from cooking domain while explaining research, right? And you said that this is a kind of a trial and error process. Which you maybe you stumble upon, some solution to the problem, right? That is the aha effect. Socrates had also said years ago or centuries ago. But my point is that in social sciences, from where you come from, Yash, there is a very structured way of conducting research, right? And this is not really, wavering here and there. It is well laid out. So what's your call on that? Do you think that it proved to be effective over time in social sciences in identifying problems correctly and addressing those problems correctly? And then so your thoughts on that particular process, the
sir,
scientific method.
yes, you are right that the trial and error method is more suited to the natural sciences than the social sciences. And social sciences has a much more defined way of conducting research. But trial and error is also a very important part of social science research. So, for example, in economics, you say have a phenomenon that okay, you want to increase incomes, or say whether you want to check whether the universal basic income will work or not. So you try different methods of conducting that research on the field. So you conduct RCTs or some survey or some other method, and you then arrive at different results, and you then check the you have various rigorous tests to check whether the results hold or not. Very different. So I think the basic idea of trial and error in different forms applies to social sciences also.
Right. So yes, do you mean by trial and error, you kind of create chaos, and they say that creativity thrives among chaotic situations. Your comment?
Sorry, I
The
didn't get the last one.
trial and error leads to kind of chaos, and they say that creativity typically thrives in chaotic conditions, and therefore, you can come out with you know, the newer solutions to problems, right? So I have just described a particular process. So your take on this, and coming from a social science background.
Sir, yes, a trial and error can lead to chaos in a lot of situations, and that's why it's more suited to natural sciences, because you can do those trials and error in a controlled lab setting. In social sciences, that may not be possible. So that's why this technique of RCTs that's being increasingly used in economics is a controlled way of conducting that trial and error and creating chaos within a limited setup. I don't think that creativity necessarily thrives in chaos.
Oh,
I'm not sure
anyway,
about
I
this.
think one can go and on, and this is not the platform to really go about discussing those things. But creativity does thrive in chaos. A lot of studies have proven it.
Okay,
And
okay, sir.
anyway, let's come back to financial sector. You did something with RBI policy 2018, right? As you know, you have written your DAP also.
Yes, sir.
RBI, there's some project which you did. So can you share some details about that particular project that you did? Was it a project?
So it was not a project; it was a competition for undergraduate and master students that's organized by the RBI annually. So we won the regional round. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to the zonal round in that. So that's a competition. It has three stages. The first stage was we had to write an essay on the financial technology sector, the fintech sector. The second was we had to give a presentation on monetary policy in the RBI, and then teams would get selected from that. And the third stage was we go to the headquarters of the RBI in Mumbai and then give a presentation there on monetary policy. So
Right.
this was the competition.
And these are hugely important topics. Fintech, A, and second issue you talked about was monetary policy. So I would like, I mean, these are of course huge issues, but I would like very crisp answer from you in terms of application of technology in financial sector. RBI has been talking about pluralistic approach and holistic approach, and also on monetary policy. I mean, it's a big question, but I want your take over the last, let's say, 3, 4 years. What has been the scenario?
Sir, coming to fintech specifically, I think India is one of the largest fintech adopters in the global market. In Asia, we are the leaders. So I think fintech, because of our robust startup system, that's a very important sector that's growing very rapidly, and that can help massively in our financial inclusion goals. That's that. In monetary policy, I think RBI, after the 2016 amendment to the RBI Act, which made a flexible inflation targeting framework, we have been moderately successful in targeting inflation. Of course, the pandemic has thrown its own challenges with inflation also rising and the growth falling. So that is that. But yes, monetary policy, we have been successful. There are challenges there as
Right. And there were challenges elsewhere also. And precisely in 2016, probably government or RBI came out with some announcements related to the financially stressed assets, the NPAs, right? So has it been effective? The policy which was put in place in 2016, and
well.
what is
Sir,
the, yeah,
two major policies actually were put in place in 2016. So one was the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, and the other was, of course, the recapitalization of banks that started from around that time. So the IBC has been successful because it has, if you see the statistics, it has brought down the resolution time massively from around 5 6 years to around 1 1.5 years. But that's also very large. And also the recoveries have increased in the IBC regime compared to say the previous regime that we had. So in these metrics, yes, the IBC has been successful. Regarding recapitalization of banks, I think yes, they helped a bit in bringing down our NPA numbers in the banks, but I don't think that's a sustainable solution, as ma'am also rightly pointed out, because we keep on pumping money in these banks. A more systemic solution is required in terms of governance reforms in the banks themselves, so how they function. Because if you have the same malaise and you keep on injecting the medicine without trying to solve that problem itself, it will just be a drain on the exchequer. So I think that's that. Yes, they help, but more systemic reforms are required.
right? I think Raghuram, our friend, he had also pushed the panic button during his tenure as governor RBI, right? And in fact, we talked a great deal about cleaning the balance sheets. What is the magnitude of the problem? What is the size of the NPA, so to say?
Sir, so March 2020 numbers were that we have around 9% of the NPAs in the banking sector, gross NPAs. But of course, the RBI's financial stability report that came out just a few days ago, it says that by next March 2022, in the baseline scenario, it can go up to around 10%. In the worst case scenario, it can go up to around 11.5%. So the problem is quite dire in that case. But
And what was the situation pre 2016?
pre
Not
2016, so, before Dr. Rajan started the asset quality review, the NPAs were in control, but obviously they were hidden in the bank's balance sheet. But once the asset quality review started, they just ballooned up to around 13 14% of the yes, sir.
all right. Okay. Now, my question would be around, of course, a lot has been said about liberalization and deregulation. So, positive Has it been constructive and destructive? I'm talking about deregulation and liberalization in the Indian context. Coming from
Yes, sir. In economic terms, liberalization and deregulation have been successful. So, if you look at simply the growth rates pre 1991 and post 1991, so our average growth rate in 1980s was just 4%. Our growth rate since then have been over 7%. So, in sheer numbers of GDP, we have been very successful in terms of bringing people out of poverty as well. 2005 to 15, we brought 271 million people out of poverty. That's a lot. That's been the highest in our history. So yes, we have been very successful, the liberalization and deregulation. Of course, there are some sectors where that has not worked quite well, and we need to be cognizant of that to move forward, especially in areas like health and education, where much more government presence is required.
so where has it has been proven to be destructive?
So I think the withdrawal of the state from health and education has been quite destructive because we see that the massive inequality that's there in our education system and our health system, as was unfortunately highlighted by the pandemic, that rural areas we were so worried that there are no facilities there or the facilities are not functional. So that's one major sector where government's deregulation has not worked quite well. Similarly, in education sector, in environment also, I think that yes, there are problems because of massive deregulation. We have seen, especially in states like Jharkhand and Odisha, where pollution and pollution and deforestation are major problems. So yeah.
I'll just make a statement and I'd like you to react with this, and that is globalization is the child of capitalism. That's the first part of the statement. And do you see globalization as a spoiled child of capitalism? Yes.
Um, so not necessarily. I think globalization is a very can be a good driver of prosperity all across the world. So I don't think it's a spoiled child of capitalism. Yes, it's a child of capitalism because the inherent tendency behind globalization is that want to have more prosperity for everyone. So, but I don't think it's a spoiled child. Yes, hyper globalization, which has been happening recently, especially financial sector led globalization, that's an issue. So, I think that's my opinion.
And then you have a former president of US. I'm sorry, I'm taking names. Uh, Possibly acting like a spoiled child, and he was trying to propound this, just hugely driving in globalization. That's the term I would use. So your take on this?
Sir, I think so. Economic theory is very clear that the more openness that you have in trade, it's better. But it does not work like that, unfortunately, in the real world because that also has massive redistribution costs. So as we've seen in the pandemic, that the huge dependence of the world on a few countries for their supply chains, even in key areas like medicine, can cause problems. So we need to have some resilience in your local economy for supply chains, like India has been doing for, say, the medicine sector, for strategic sectors like defense. So in these areas, I think yes, globalization is the way to go forward. But I don't think closing our economy or autarky is the way to go forward. Taking an extreme case of globalization. So that's
So my last question, and going stepping back a bit, do you, where do you see the role of World Bank in pushing globalization?
uh, so World Bank and the IMF, these Bretton Woods institutions, they did play a very important role in making countries open up. With their structural reforms agenda. So whenever a country used to come to them for any assistance, they would put these conditions that you open your economy more, as happened with us also in 1991. So the World Bank, even now with their ease of doing business index, so the parameters there also have inputs like how open your economy, the restrictions on buying property or everything. I think yes, these institutions have played a major role in globalization.
Thank you. Back to ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Yash, a journey that started in Budwell, very
Yes.
small place. Then you went to Bokaro. Then after that you came to Delhi. So basically you were there in the mining sector. Your parents were in Dhanbad. So what is the mining industry in India? The mining sector in India.
not sure I get your question. What is the mining
Yes, yes.
industry?
What is the loophole? What is the problem in the mining sector in India?
Okay, sir, the most important problem that the mining sector faces is inadequate use of cutting edge technology. So, for example, in coal sector, we see that open cast mining is preferred, which is quite destructive to the environment and to the local population. So, similarly, and this also causes a lot of pollution and everything. So, the lack of use of technology is the most important impediment that our mining sector faces. Apart from that, I think rehabilitation and land acquisition issues are also major problems there. So these are the two major challenges that our mining sector faces.
Yes, Naxalism is a major problem in Jharkhand. Now, what is the reason behind Naxalism?
Sir, I think the Naxal movement started as a movement for voicing people's grievances in Jharkhand as well as in elsewhere. But I think in the recent years they have morphed into a political movement for merely usurping the state and not really championing the cause of the people. So they in fact deprive the people there of their development, of their due development. So to keep their movement ongoing. I think now that's the.
Okay, yes, what is the way out?
So I think winning the people's hearts is the that's the battle that we have to win. Battle in the hearts and minds of the people. That's the most sustainable solution for Naxalism. One way is of course development. You increase the level of incomes there. But I think even more important than that is governance reforms. So that people see that yes, there is a government that is responsible to us, that is accountable to us, that can voice our grievances against. I think that's the most important way.
Uh, yes, there has been always a tension between the center and the states. And nowadays, what we have seen that the oppositional states, they always say that there exists coercive federalism in the country. Now, how far this view of the oppositional states can be justified?
Sir, I think that yes, partly there are these are mainly political uh, grandstandings that this goes to federalism, but there are pre-existing challenges in our federal structure. Some of them, the most prominent ones, are the office of the governor, which has its own problems. Then
No, yes, that is an obvious thing. We all know it. But why this term coercive federalism is being used?
okay, so recently, why this term has been invoked is that the states are arguing that the center is usurping the states' rights in terms of center legislating in areas which are squarely in the state domains in the state list. For example, the farm laws. The states argue that this is coercive federalism. You are legislating in our areas. In GST, also the compensation states are arguing that we were promised a return of 14% of revenues, but we are not getting that. So I think these are the two primary areas in which this term is being used right
Okay. One more thing that I want to discuss with you. We are into 75 years of Indian independence. What is the major achievement of India as a nation?
now. So the most important achievement I think as we have done in the last 75 years is to show that as a diverse nation, as a plural nation, we can have a very thriving democracy and be proud of it, despite having massive levels of illiteracy and inequality still in our country. So I think that's our most important achievement to the world.
We have a
Apart from that,
stable democracy. We have a stable
yes,
democracy.
yes, of course, a stable, thriving democracy.
Okay. And what is to be done?
Sir, I think uh, the actions are required on multiple fronts. Of course, the economic challenges are formidable given the pandemic and given the massive contraction of the economy. But apart from that, I think improving our state capacity is very important. We do very well in building a nuclear weapon or say building rockets to space at the cheapest level in the world. But we do very poor in say delivering the basic goods like education and health and drinking water to our people. So I think these are the areas where state capacity has to be improved much more for us to move forward in the coming times.
Thank you, Yash.
So, Dr. Rajlakshmi, what would be your advice to him?
Yeah. First of all, you were very, of course, confident and have a very pleasing personality. You were smiling and answering. That was very good. One or two things. You were speaking very fast. I mean, the sense, wherever sometimes you get so excited that you tend to rush. So I think you need to check on that. That is one. Two, about the new education policy, you must read more because there are many, many points in that. I think you're not very clear. You were not very clear. And so you just covered up, very confidently by saying the major thing. But MPhil is not just the dropout of MPhil is not the main point. The main point is about introduction of more languages, making mother tongue at certain level compulsory, then exit
Yes.
point, second, third, fourth year, introduction of research, all that. So you need to read more on that. Okay, and otherwise I think and about, of course, what do you mean by research and all, so that also. So that's it. I think overall you are a good candidate. All the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Amin.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Yash, I think a big thumbs up to you, and both the sons included. That
Thanks.
you're well informed in your domain area. Don't get complacent, right?
Okay.
Keep up the good work going, right?
Yes.
You could
Definitely.
certainly, you decide your own pace, certainly, ma'am, as very rightly pointed out, uh, that you need to really possibly tone down your pace a bit, right? And that, what will result in is more forceful articulation of your views,
Listen.
right? Because you have it with you, everything. Only thing is to create that extra force, focus and well structured responses. I think will do you good. But be yourselves. You have to
Okay.
decide yourself on that.
Okay.
Uh,
Thank you.
on the body language side, I thought, of course, we are an online platform, so therefore, not much of feedback is possible. However, once again, I observed that your movement of head and sometimes your body movement also tends to be on a little higher side. So you need to really,
Go there.
I'm sure they will give you video recording. So kindly observe, and then you know, you could have your own mock in terms of standing in front of the mirror after having watched the video, and then compare as to where do you really would like to regulate your movements of the body. Naturally, you have to take the entire span of attention of the entire board with you. Um, Otherwise, I keep preparing and more on the application and interpretive side of your replies. These should be loaded with interpretations and analysis of issues. I'm very sure there will be people in the interview board out there who will really have had a very close look at the economy and the kind of mess which has been created, some of our own making and some because of the national challenges we're facing in terms of pandemic. Get into that and
Yes,
come
sir.
out with some concoction which is unique and probably be a non-conformist. You need not really agree with the members. However,
Yes.
get into an engaged, constructive discussion with them. And I'm sure you have it in you. Prepare well on current affairs. When is your interview?
5th of August.
So just about a month. So peak
Yes,
your
sir.
preparation just as you approach. You should
Yes,
not
sir.
really, peter out in the
Yes,
interview,
sure, sir.
right? So
Sure, sir.
all the very best.
Thank
Take
you, sir.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor Kumud.
Yash, I like the way in which you put forward your arguments. I talked to you on many issues. You were really good. Your opinion was balanced one. But you need to keep on the good work. And as sir and ma'am had said, you need to improve on the areas that they have suggested. Good luck.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, you said you're working in the PM Secretariat in the Economic Advisory Council.
Yes, ma'am.
Who is heading it?
Uh, Ma'am, right now, I think Dr. Nageshwaran is heading it. I'm not sure.
And where does it sit?
Uh, it's not a
Where is your
well-defined board.
office?
Ma'am, my office is in Hoskas in the National Institute of Public Finance and Policy only. So we got a
You had
project from them.
mentioned. Yeah.
So it's an advisory project that we are doing for them.
No, but you are doing as a In what capacity? You are part of that council, or you have been given a project and uh, there is a team of academicians doing it?
No, ma'am, we are not part of the council. So the NIPFP where I am working, it's an autonomous think tank under the Ministry
Oh,
of
they
Finance.
got the project and
Yes,
they have given it to you. So you
yes,
must be
yeah.
a
So
group
I,
of a few people.
yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you said your current project is on, what did you say?
The centrally sponsored schemes.
Centrism. Good. Perfect. Anyway, so that is a good one and you spoke well. Everybody has given you good feedback and I fully endorse whatever they said. Only one point which I said in the beginning and which Dr. Rajlakshmi also reinforced, you speak too fast. And it
I'll
doesn't
improve.
have to be a monotone. See how we are all speaking, we have also learned. Give yourself a little pause because what is in your mind, you don't have to race it and pour it out. People are not here to learn from you, it is just to gauge you.
Of
So
course.
speak slowly with the pause, with punctuation marks, and the voice can be, if possible, with practice, a little more, ups and downs. It doesn't have to be the same pitch.
Okay. Okay.
Otherwise, everything is fine. And sometimes you do tend to answer quickly before the question is over. Take a deep breath yourself because the person may not have finished the question, but because you speak fast, you feel this pause is actually a closure to the question, which it is not. It's
Okay.
happened more than
Yes.
once.
Okay.
And about your body movements, right now you're on a chair or on a sofa.
On a chair, ma'am.
So sit with your back, small of your back touching the back of the chair. Shift back.
Okay.
Your hips, your small of the back should touch the back of the chair. That will give you support to your back and you will not unnecessarily sway. That's
Okay.
one small thing. Otherwise, you can observe yourself. And all the best to you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
You can leave now. Anything you want to ask? I forgot to ask.
Ma'am, my questions were covered in your
Okay,
feedback.
okay, okay. Then.
Thank you.
All the
Thank you.
best. Bye.